Good morning and welcome to Rising. Happy Tuesday. We still have quite a bit of snow in the nation's capital. In fact, it continued snowing much of yesterday. But really the thing affecting my commute was the road closures for what I suspect is Jimmy Carter's funeral situation going on.
Yeah, I think it must be. They weren't so severe yesterday, even when there was the certification of President-elect Trump's victory going on. So I imagine It must be Carter-related. That seems to be causing a bit more obstruction than the snow. So there we are.
We are here, nevertheless, ready to talk about the news, are we not?
We are indeed, Robbie. So let's kick off. What is on your radar?
Well, the 2024 election results have been officially certified by Vice President Kamala Harris, the loser of said election. The VP performed her constitutional duty admirably, presiding over the ceremonial tallying of the electoral votes and officially declaring Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Bravo. The Democratic Party lost no opportunity to remind voters that last time when the situation was reversed, some Republicans, including Trump, made serious efforts to thwart the transfer of power and delegitimize Biden's win. Now, in a statement, Biden said we should commit to remembering January 6, 2021 every year. January 6, January 6, January 6. Democrats never want you to forget that date. They may, however, wish you to forget an interesting detail. This election, 2024, is actually the first time that no Democrats have objected to the Republican presidential candidate's victory since the 1988 election. That was the year I was born. Don't take my word for it. Take it from Semaphore reporter Dave Weigel, who notes on X that Dems are chagrined now about their futile, meaningless protests after Republican wins in 2000, 2004, and 2016. This didn't become a capital offense until recently. Now, it's true that officials' objections registered by some Democrats in the aftermath of those elections are not the same thing, I'm not pretending they are, with the embarrassing episode that occurred after 2020 when an angry mob smashed the windows of the Capitol and feuded with the police. It is absolutely appropriate to condemn their actions, and it is right and proper that the trespassers were prosecuted for their crimes. But let's not exaggerate the magnitude, the gravity of what occurred that day. It wasn't a calamity on par with terrorism or a natural disaster. It's not anywhere close to one of the darkest days in our history. People who exaggerate what happened doing just as much damage as people who minimize it. Enter Sunny Hostin. The View host made an interesting comparison on yesterday's edition of the show. She said January 6th was on par with World War II, slavery, and for good measure, the Holocaust. Really? Let's watch.
I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, you know, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, you know, like World War II, things that happened, you know, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
Oh, Sunny. Sunny, Sunny, Sunny. Again, January 6th was bad. Not saying it's not. But you find yourself comparing it to the Holocaust. Please seek help. So here you have a person doing the exact thing I think I criticized yesterday, saying it's the same as I think I said 9/11 yesterday. She said she used those descriptions. Holocaust. It's not like the Holocaust, Niall. Surely you agree with. And
I agree it's not like the Holocaust, but I also don't think I've ever heard a radar from you that I disagree with so much.
Oh, all right. Let's get to it.
I think January the 6th was a calamity. I think it was one of the darkest days in our history. And to say January the 6th, January the 6th, January the 6th, as if, oh, well, that was just a minor thing that we need to get over, just seems ludicrous to me. Let's get back to the realities of it. Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Donald Trump lied about that. And a mob invaded the United States Capitol with the intention of keeping in power the man who had lost the election. That is about as grave an act of mass criminality as it is possible to imagine within a democratic system. Because had that mob succeeded, it would have detonated a very important pillar in democracy, which is the recognition of the legitimacy of elections, the peaceful transfer of power, and the importance of that being accepted and not being overturned by mob rule.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but them just camping out in the building was not going to prevent the transfer of power. None of their physical actions taken on that day were going to do. That's different. I take seriously the legal challenges Trump made, which could have had that effect, although no court took them seriously whatsoever because they were so out there and not based on sound legal theories. The occupation of buildings, something's that happens on every American college campus and parts of Portland where deranged activists occupy public buildings,
Robby,
sometimes for days and weeks at a time.
Why were they occupying that building that day?
For an illegitimate purpose, for which
was
they've all been arrested.
Disrupt the certification of an election.
But
it
their
is not
actions
some
were not going
student
to
taking
succeed
over
at that.
a building in Columbia University and naming it Heinz Hall. It is people going to the site of the certification of a presidential election to disrupt and prevent that certification, and in doing so to open up the maintaining of someone in power who had lost, who had been rejected by the electorate.
They have all been arrested for the crimes they committed, which were smashing the windows, trespassing in the building. I take it seriously that they shouldn't have done that, and I want the same thing done to them as anyone else who smashed any of the windows of the buildings in Washington, D.C., and I hold Trump morally to blame for having contributed to those actions that were taken, even though I do not think he instructed or wanted them to take that action, and has indeed criticized them subsequently. But the idea that the government transfer of power was not going to happen because they were not a military force. They don't have a.
Well, I mean, BLM isn't a military force. The reason
I know. I'm not saying they weren't a threat to the overthrow of the U.S. government either.
Yeah, no, but the January the 6th people were, because the purpose of them going in, some of them who had zip ties, some of them who had knives, I think there were guns carried by some, according to the Department of Justice. But the point of the whole exercise was to thwart the transfer of power. Whether they came, I would argue they did come close, you would argue they did not. That was their intention. And it was an intention that was being pursued by violent means in invading the United States Capitol to intimidate people, to threaten Mike Pence with being hanged, and to otherwise prevent the legitimate winner of a presidential election from being certified as such.
But Mike Pence utterly rejected the idea that he could have some kind of influence, that he could reject the electors, and
but that has no bearing on the crime. I mean, to say
I
want to hang you doesn't. Whether the person who you're aiming to hang bows to the intimidation or not doesn't alter the fact of the intimidation.
So the incoherent rage of the mob was not I think you're attributing too much organization and ideology and methodology. It was I don't believe it was planned that it was going to happen. It was largely spontaneous outburst of anger directed at lawmakers that is absolutely punishable, but we see it very differently. I see it as a riot. I do not see it as an insurrection, because they had no. I don't think they had any. How could they have? The government would have met later and done the same thing if they had occupied the building, if they had refused to leave, or then the military would have come cleared them out. Like, it's not. You're treating it like it's a paramilitary organization.
It just seems such a bizarre argument to make, to say people invading the United States Capitol and seeking to overthrow the result of an election, that becomes somehow mitigated by the fact that they're not a paramilitary force.
By the fact that it's totally ludicrous to think they could have accomplished that?
I don't think it is ludicrous at all. I mean, if Pence had, for example, bowed to the intimidation, or if lawmakers had bowed to the intimidation, or if they had committed violence against people such that the army had come in under Trump's command, I don't think it's at all ludicrous to imagine that.
Well, now we're starting to imagine a lot of counterfact. What if Trump had seized control of the military, and the military had all decided to listen to Trump, and the court said nothing about this, so the court was just ignored? Then what if? I guess we could have a world that just bears no resemblance.
But you're saying what if? But your argument against treating, well, whatever your argument is, treating these people more leniently,
as criminals,
is based upon the what if that it. I don't think that's we just disagree fundamentally.
All right. Well, you let us decide Thanks for listening, and we've got lots more to talk about today on Rising, including some changes coming to Facebook, announced by Mark Zuckerberg, that he says are aimed at restoring free speech to that platform. We'll debate it, discuss it, coming up next.